It started like any other morning at a quiet storage yard in Warwickshire, forklifts rumbling, metal clanging, workers moving crates of fruit. But within seconds, that calm shattered. Armed officers flooded the site, shouting commands, kicking down doors, and cutting through the noise of grinding steel. They weren't there for bananas. They were there to end an empire. Inside a single shipping container, packed neatly with boxes of fruit, investigators found the truth behind one of Britain's most sophisticated smuggling networks, a pipeline stretching from the jungles of South America to the quiet corners of the English countryside. Hidden in the roof, 139 kilograms of high-purity cocaine. Street value, £11 million. But this wasn't a lucky break. It was the endgame of a carefully planned operation, one that had been watched, tracked, and set up from the very beginning. As armed NCA officers moved in, 4 men tried to flee, clawing at fences, dropping crowbars, running for their lives. Within minutes, it was over. The container was secured, the suspects were in cuffs, and the operation that was supposed to make them millions had just collapsed before their eyes. But the man behind it all wasn't even there. He was more than 1,500 miles away, sitting comfortably in Turkey, directing every move through encrypted messages, believing he was untouchable. To understand how it all began, you have to look far beyond that Warwickshire yard, to a man who built his empire from behind a screen. His name was Sajid Ali, a British national who had traded the cold streets of Birmingham for the sunlit skyline of Istanbul. On the surface, he was just another businessman living abroad. But behind the messages, the meetings, and the money transfers, he was quietly coordinating one of the most ambitious cocaine pipelines ever uncovered by the National Crime Agency. Ali wasn't known for violence or street-level dealing. He was known for something else. Precision. Those who knew him described a man who never raised his voice, never acted impulsively, and never left fingerprints where he didn't have to. He preferred structure, control, order. In a world ruled by chaos, Ali brought discipline, and that's what made him dangerous. His story didn't start with cocaine. Like many who rise through the underground trade, Ali began small. Years earlier, he had worked in import and export logistics, learning the fine details of freight routes, container shipping, and customs clearances. It was legitimate, at least in the beginning. But over time, those same skills became his greatest weapon. He learned exactly how to move goods across borders without drawing attention. He knew what raised red flags and what didn't. Ali didn't operate like the traditional crime boss. He avoided the streets, the clubs, the deals. He worked remotely, issuing orders through encrypted messaging apps like WhatsApp and Signal. His communication was calculated, often through short voice notes, coded, calm, and always detached. His associates in the UK referred to him with respect and a touch of fear. Those under him handled the dirty work, men like Robert B. and Merent Shahu, who oversaw the shipments on British soil. They were the visible hands of an invisible man. Ali's goal was simple: never be physically linked to the drugs. If something went wrong, he'd already be thousands of miles away, untouchable behind a foreign SIM card. For a while, it worked flawlessly. Small shipments disappeared into the system, moving through legitimate ports hidden among everyday goods. Containers of coffee, fruit, and textiles, all used as camouflage. The profits were staggering, and the trail, almost impossible to trace. But success in the drug world breeds greed, and greed demands scale. Ali wanted to move bigger quantities, faster, and cleaner than anyone else. That ambition led him to the spring of 2022, when he helped organize a single, massive shipment of bananas from Ecuador to the UK. Inside, 139 kilograms of cocaine worth more than £11 million. It was supposed to be perfect. The container had legitimate paperwork, clean route, and trusted transport companies handling delivery. Ali's messages to his team were confident, almost routine. He'd done this before. But this time, something was different. Unknown to Ali, UK Border Force officers had already received intelligence from overseas authorities, a tip-off that a container from South America matched the pattern of cartel trafficking. They flagged it, tracked it, and quietly passed it to the National Crime Agency. As the container crossed the ocean, Ali was sending updates to his team, arranging logistics, confirming drop-off points, and finalizing payments. He believed he was orchestrating another flawless delivery. In reality, the NCA was already watching his network unfold like a map. Before Sajid Ali's name appeared in any police file, before the £11 million cocaine seizure that would bring his network down, he was just another face in the crowd, a logistics man who knew how to move things. But that knowledge was exactly what made him dangerous. Ali's entry into crime wasn't marked by violence or street-level dealing. It began quietly, almost innocently, in the grey space between legitimate trade and organized crime. Using his background in import and export logistics, he began coordinating small shipments from Europe and South America. On paper, everything was legal, shipments of fruit, textiles, and other everyday goods. But behind those documents, Ali was testing the system, learning how to hide contraband among legitimate cargo. He paid close attention to patterns in customs checks, timing of inspections, and the thresholds that triggered additional scrutiny. Over time, he discovered a simple truth: the more normal something looked, the less anyone looked at it. That discovery became the foundation of his empire. Ali wasn't interested in local dealing, his role was higher. He positioned himself as the coordinator, a man who never touched the drugs himself. Instead, he built a structure, a hierarchy that allowed him to stay invisible while others took the risks. At the top sat Ali, operating from Turkey, controlling every detail through encrypted WhatsApp voice notes. Below him were trusted contacts on British soil, men he'd known for years. Robert B. was his anchor in the UK, responsible for the transport and local coordination. He handled the movement of goods once they cleared customs, ensuring that containers reached their destinations without raising suspicion. He organized drivers, tracked deliveries, and liaised with warehouses where shipments could be quietly unpacked. Then there was Mehran Shahu, an Albanian national with deep ties to both the UK and Balkan underworld. Shahu was the logistics fixer, arranging storage sites, rental units, and delivery points. He had access to legitimate companies that could move freight undetected, giving the operation the appearance of a normal business. Together, they formed the perfect chain. Ali issued commands from abroad, Shahu made the arrangements, Robert executed the moves. Every step was deliberate, every message encrypted, and every participant kept on a need-to-know basis. By 2021, the system was refined. Ali had identified legitimate fruit importers as the perfect cover. Containers of bananas and other produce entered the UK daily, high volume, low suspicion. And unlike electronics or machinery, fruit shipments were perishable, which meant customs officers often had limited time to inspect them. Ali exploited that weakness. His network began inserting concealed cocaine packages into the upper sections of these containers, hidden between the roof panels or inside false compartments. Once the container cleared the docks, his team on the ground would intercept it, recover the drugs, and send the rest of the cargo on its way as if nothing had happened. It was a method both brilliant and bold, using the very structure of global trade to mask his crimes. Authorities would later reveal that Ali's fingerprints were never found on a single package. No direct evidence tied him physically to the drugs. But the NCA had already begun to see a pattern: identical routes, identical suppliers, and the same network of contacts connecting each shipment. By early 2022, Sajid Ali had perfected his system, and now, he was ready to scale it. From his apartment in Turkey, he began coordinating a new deal that would dwarf everything he'd done before. It wasn't just another shipment. It was a statement, the kind of move that would cement his status among Europe's elite traffickers. The plan began thousands of miles away, in Ecuador, one of South America's most active gateways for cocaine exports. Working through his Albanian contacts, Ali arranged for a shipping container filled with bananas to leave a South American port bound for the United Kingdom. On paper, it was a legitimate fruit shipment, all documents verified, all routes approved. But hidden within that cargo was something far more valuable. Inside the roof cavity of the container, expertly concealed between reinforced panels, lay 139 kilograms of high-purity cocaine. Each block was tightly wrapped, industrially compressed, and vacuum-sealed, a concealment method so advanced it could evade even trained inspectors. The entire modification had been carried out with precision, as though by professionals who had done it many times before. By the time the container was sealed, the drugs were invisible to the naked eye. Even X-ray scans struggled to identify them. To anyone else, it was just another load of fruit. But on the streets of the UK, that shipment was worth £11 million, the kind of profit that could fund entire operations for years. Ali coordinated everything remotely. Using encrypted WhatsApp voice notes, he sent instructions to his men on the ground, Robert B. in charge of logistics, and Mehran Shahu, his Albanian liaison. Both men operated from the UK, ensuring the container would pass through the right hands once it arrived. The chosen entry point was London Gateway Port, one of Britain's busiest and most modern docks. Every week, thousands of containers arrived from across the world, and Ali's strategy relied on that sheer scale. Among the steel labyrinth of cargo, his container would blend in, processed by customs like any other load. After clearing the port, it was to be transported inland to a storage yard in Warwickshire, a quiet industrial site far removed from the chaos of London. There, under the cover of routine unloading, the cocaine would be extracted from the roof and quickly distributed through pre-arranged channels, before anyone even noticed. To outsiders, it was a flawless plan. Every step rehearsed, every risk minimized. But the cracks were already forming, because while Ali's team believed they were invisible, the National Crime Agency had already been watching. Intelligence shared from international partners had identified the container before it even left South America. Officers quietly tracked its journey across the Atlantic, monitoring its every movement until it reached the UK. But they didn't intercept it, not yet. The NCA wanted to see who would come to collect it, who would move it, and most importantly, who was giving the orders. Meanwhile, in the UK, the operation moved forward like clockwork. Robert B. and Shahu were calm, confident, and unaware that every step was being recorded. By the time the container reached British soil, Sajid Ali's network was running like a well-oiled machine. Every man had a role. Every task had a timestamp. It looked, on the surface, like a legitimate import operation, invoices, transport schedules, and signed delivery sheets all in order. Multiple containers had been released around the same time, a clever diversion to scatter attention across several shipments. Legitimate transport firms were hired to move the goods, unaware they were part of a drug smuggling pipeline. To anyone looking from the outside, this was just business as usual: fruit deliveries, warehouse storage, logistics on schedule. Ali's team believed everything was going exactly to plan. But while they were celebrating their precision, the National Crime Agency and UK Border Force had already made their move. When the container was flagged and inspected, officers discovered the cocaine concealed in the roof. Rather than seizing it immediately, they replaced the drugs with dummy packages, resealed the panels, and let the container continue its journey. It was the start of a controlled delivery, one of the NCA's most sophisticated tactics. The goal wasn't just to seize the drugs, it was to watch who came to collect them. From that point on, every mile was under surveillance. Undercover vehicles trailed the lorries. Every call, every text, every meeting was monitored and recorded. Meanwhile, in the UK, Robert B. and Mehran Shahu were preparing to receive the shipment. Their confidence was unshakable. The plan had worked before, and they had no reason to believe this time would be any different. Ali, speaking through voice notes from Turkey, kept calm, congratulating his team on another flawless job. But they didn't realize the game had already turned. The NCA wasn't just watching, they were waiting. The moment the container arrived at the Warwickshire storage yard, surveillance units closed in. Armed officers positioned around the site, unmarked vehicles blocking every exit. Inside, the crew prepared to unload what they believed was their biggest payday yet. In the early hours, two men arrived first, Florian Ibra and Arman Cavani, both confident, both unaware that the container they were about to open held nothing but dummy packages. They moved quickly, backing up a forklift and grabbing a crowbar. The sound of metal on metal echoed through the yard as they began to pry open the container's roof, searching for the cocaine they believed was hidden inside. Unmarked vans waited nearby. Armed officers crouched behind them, ready. Every second felt longer than the last. Then, the command came. Within moments, the yard exploded into chaos. NCA teams flooded the site, weapons drawn, surrounding the suspects before they could react. Ibra and Cavani dropped their tools and tried to run, but it was too late. They were tackled to the ground and restrained. Within minutes, Robert B. and Mehran Shahu were also in custody, the entire UK cell dismantled in a single strike. Back in Turkey, Sajid Ali was calm, believing the operation had gone to plan. His messages to associates suggested confidence. He'd done it before, and to him, this was just another successful import. But what he didn't know was that the very technology he trusted had already turned against him. During the investigation, the NCA had uncovered encrypted WhatsApp voice notes linking Ali directly to the shipment. Every instruction, every update, every coded phrase had been recovered and decrypted. The network that once made him invisible had become his undoing. At Warwick Crown Court, the evidence played out like a movie, only this one didn't have a happy ending. Jurors were shown surveillance footage from the Warwickshire yard, forklifts moving under floodlights, and the moment armed officers swarmed in. Every second was time-stamped, every message traced. Prosecutors laid out the network in black and white. WhatsApp voice notes, text messages, and location data forming a perfect chain of command. At the top sat Sajid Ali, the man in Turkey giving orders from behind a screen. The four men caught at the scene, Robert B., Mehran Shahu, Florian Ibra, and Arman Kavani, stood in silence as recordings of Ali's instructions were played aloud. His voice, calm, confident, unmistakable, echoed through the courtroom. Still, Ali remained free. From his apartment in Istanbul, he watched the fallout unfold, believing his distance made him untouchable. But then, he made the one mistake that changed everything. In early 2024, Ali flew into the UK, a brief visit, perhaps to settle unfinished business or gauge the damage left behind. He almost got away with it. But as he prepared to board a return flight to Turkey, NCA officers closed in at Heathrow Airport. He was arrested on the spot. No chase, no warning. Just a quiet end to a long pursuit. When his case reached Warwick Crown Court, the evidence was overwhelming. Investigators had found photos of the container on his phone, audio notes giving precise instructions, and chat logs linking him directly to his co-conspirators. Prosecutors described him as the architect of the operation, a man who built his empire from afar, trusting technology to keep him safe. But the very tools he used to stay invisible had made him visible to everyone. The verdict marked the end of a long and complex investigation, but also the fall of a man who believed distance could protect him. At Warwick Crown Court, Sajid Ali was sentenced to 11 years in prison for orchestrating the importation of 139 kilograms of cocaine into the UK. The judge described him as a deliberate, organized, and pivotal, a man who stayed behind the scenes but controlled everything that mattered. His associates had already faced justice months earlier at Warwick Crown Court. Robert B., the coordinator on the ground, received 16 years. Mehran Shahu, his trusted logistics partner, was jailed for 14 years. Florian Ibra, one of the men caught opening the container, was sentenced to 17 years. And Arman Kavani, his accomplice that day, received 15 years. Together, their sentences added up to over 70 years behind bars. The National Crime Agency called it a major victory against organized crime, one that had dismantled a smuggling route linking South America, Albania, and the UK. It wasn't just about seizing drugs, it was about breaking a network that had quietly operated across borders. But even in success, there were shadows left behind. The Albanian cartel connected to the shipment was never publicly named. The real source of the cocaine, somewhere deep in the jungles of Ecuador, remained untouched. Ali had fallen, his network dismantled, yet the machine that supplied him still turned elsewhere. Sajid Ali believed distance made him safe, that operating from thousands of miles away would keep him invisible. But in the end, that same distance only made his capture inevitable. A single shipping container, a handful of voice notes, and a banana shipment that exposed an empire worth millions. He never set foot in the yard. He never touched a single brick of cocaine. Yet his orders moved men, money, and mountains, until the walls closed in. Technology was his greatest weapon, and his greatest weakness. If this story shocked you, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because more untold stories of power, betrayal, and downfall are coming next.